If you watched my A74M video, and if you haven't, go and watch it, I'll wait, you may be wondering why such a bizarre numbering convention came about. Before we dive into that, we should see how many of these things there are. As you can see from this map, it's a lot. 15 in England, 1 in Wales, 3 in Scotland, and 1 in Northern Ireland. The numbers shown in yellow, and if you're somehow casting this video to a 4 or 5 line monochrome television set, I can't help you, are not signposted, but have paperwork that shows they exist. With two obvious exceptions, the majority of these are short spurs from major motorways or completely isolated city centre bypasses. This has led to the belief that these AXM routes are somehow lesser or fake motorways. It's not the case, so let's find out why. As ever, the answer is British bureaucracy. Let us travel back to 1958, when motorways were just about to become a thing, and there were massive arguments in the Ministry of Transport over what the blessed thing should be known as. Having abandoned the frankly ridiculous concept of rerouting the A50 onto the M1, someone finally had the bright idea to introduce the M designation. So far so simple. But of course this wouldn't be Britain without someone throwing a spanner into the works. Enter the question of short bypass roads built to motorway standards, of which there were several, including one around Maidstone and another around Doncaster. The Ministry was concerned that routing drivers off the A20 and A1 would cause confusion, so it was decided that these bypasses would simply be part of the A20 and A1 respectively, but with the new blue motorway signs. You may be wondering why this didn't quite happen. Well, to put it simply, the Ministry did not like the proposed motorway symbol that the Anderson Committee had created, because apparently the standard symbol being used in France and other European nations at the time was ugly. I suspect it may more likely have been because it wasn't invented here. And you thought Brexit and UK isolationism was a 2010s concept, didn't you? The problem was that now using A numbers on motorways meant the approach signing had no way to tell you that it was actually a motorway, as there was no symbol and the signs were all blue. In a panic, because the Maidstone and Doncaster bypasses were not far from opening and the signs needed to be fabricated, the Ministry decided to add M in brackets to highlight the presence of motorway regulations. The rest, as they say, is history. If you're still baffled, the simplest way to think about this is that an AXM is simply part of an A road which has motorway restrictions. It is indeed a full motorway, just one with a strange number. I should point out that the width, presence of a hard shoulder, speed limit and so on and so forth has no bearing on motorway restrictions. As long as the relevant legal paperwork has been filled out, you could in theory turn your own cul-de-sac into a motorway. This isn't the full story though. The newly formed designation was deemed to have other value, particularly after the motorway signs were adjusted in the 1963 Warboys report to resemble those we have today. AXM routes were now being assigned as temporary numbers for short bypasses that would later become part of longer routes. For example, the A48M Port Talbot bypass in Wales, which was later absorbed into the M4. This policy was applied in a really ad hoc and inexplicable manner. For instance, there are plenty of planning documents that have referred to the A11M and A23M. Fortunately, none of these numbers were applied, but to go back to the 1990s, the A74M was indeed one example where it was applied, and then not replaced by the intended number. This brings us on to the other massively long example, which is the A1M. Currently in 4 distinct sections, the oldest being the aforementioned Doncaster bypass opened back in 1960, and the most recent section being the early 2010s completion throughout North Yorkshire. The intention here was to renumber this as M1 to link London and Newcastle with a single route, but much like the A74M, this didn't happen. For me, the AXM numbering system is an anachronism and one we need to get rid of. For example, the A3M exists despite the original A3 still being retained. This isn't supposed to happen. An extremely short-lived proposal to create expressways when the A14 was being upgraded around Huntingdon and Cambridge was going to reuse AXM numbers for this concept, but this was dismissed as a rubbish idea, and instead the A14 opened with a raft of standard traffic regulation orders. The strangest one though right now has to be the A1077M in Scunthorpe, which is just a section of the old M181 that has been renumbered because a roundabout has been built. This motorway will be revoked when the housing associated with that roundabout appears. Prior to this, the winner was Northern Ireland's inexplicable A8M, which is not connected to the M2 directly, so has no rational reason to be a motorway, but there's a lot of history in Northern Irish motorways that this video isn't going to cover. What do you think? I'd be interested to hear your views on these numbers. Would you get rid of them like I want to, or do you not care one iota and think it's just something us nerds get bothered about? If you'd like more information on the motorway numbering system, I recommend that you check out Pathetic Motorways and roads.org.uk. Links to both will be in the description for this video.